Today, we're going to be looking at one of my favorite tricks to do, and that is the Brent Stole. This trick is quite difficult to figure out at first, and honestly for learning it, I'd give it about a 7, 8 out of 10 difficulty. It is a very annoying trick to figure out, but once you do have it figured out, it works every time and is completely consistent. It's well worth the grind, and I highly recommend learning it, especially if you're a competitive player. Before we really get into learning this trick, I'm just going to give a brief overview of what's going on here. I'll describe everything in a lot more detail when we get to that part of the tutorial. In the very basics, what you're doing is making a slack when you whip the string, grabbing a part of that slack, and that loop that forms from it is getting forced behind the yo-yo. In essence, that's what's happening. That is very easy to say, quite difficult to do. So let's get into some actual tips and tricks on how to make this as easy as possible. To start, you are going to throw a breakaway. From there, you are going to do a whip just like you would do for something like a hitamasa hook or a laceration. That whip is a very standard whip for stuff like this. So you are going to be throwing that whip. From this whip, you'll see that it forms 2 strings that you could grab. You are going to grab the one that is closest to you with your non-yo-yo hand pointer finger. If all goes right, you should see a little bit of a slack kind of going around the string. It won't really go into anything at this point, but if you're popping the yo-yo high enough, you should be seeing a slack flying around a little bit. This next part is the hardest part of the whole trick. What you're trying to do is get that loop of slack to go around the string and back into the yo-yo. And there's a few things that you can do to help make this easier. One of those is to take your yo-yo hand and push it forward. Now don't make this dramatic. Don't really push it as far forward as you can. You can see it's still doable, but that is so much more difficult. When I say push it forward, I mean like a 15 to 30 degree angle. Like you're really not pushing it far. But if you keep your hands perfectly aligned, you're gonna have problems where you're starting to land on the string or under the string, and there's just gonna be issues. So if you put your hand forward, that way it stays out of the way of the yo-yo and it lets the slack come around easier. Another piece of advice that I have is keeping your finger as straight as you can, at least while you're starting to learn this trick. Your pointer finger really doesn't have to do much. All of the stuff that's happening is coming from your yo-yo hand. As you've seen in previous clips here, I pinch it like that, but that's once you've learned how to do the trick and you're trying to make the triangle bigger. But when you're first learning it with keeping your finger straight out is perfectly fine. If you want to try doing it curled, absolutely perfect, that's up to you. But I found it much easier to learn, keeping your finger as straight as possible, because that just makes it so that you have less things to think about while you're trying to figure out an already difficult trick. At this point, you have the knowledge of how the trick works, and that is very important. Just understanding how the slack comes around, how the trick forms. What you probably don't have at this point is the muscle memory and the hand-eye knowledge, if you can put it that way, to actually land the trick. Which, that is the most difficult part of this trick, is just getting all of the timings to line up perfectly. So, some advice that I would have is don't whip super hard. You need to whip a little bit hard for this trick, but nothing crazy. If your arm is just dying and you've whipped so hard and cannot land it, that might be the reason. If you whip it really hard, it's doable, but it's it's much harder to do. Because that slack, when you're whipping, just comes around that much faster, which means that you need to get your hands lined up that much faster. It makes it much more difficult. It's doable when you have the muscle memory, but I would not try to whip super hard before that, or at all. Another thing to make this trick easier is just making sure that you don't have a whole bunch of string tension in your string. A few loops like this is fine, but if you have a lot of twists, that can cause a lot of issues because there is slack in this trick. If your string's looking more like this, probably get those out. And that goes with any trick. Any trick that you're trying to learn, just have a neutral string tension. Like, I have this trick mastered, and I can feel it is much more difficult to do with a high tension string. And the last piece of advice that I have for you is to just be patient with yourself. This trick, as I have said, and I'm not exaggerating, takes hours to learn. Chances are you're gonna be doing a lot of this, a lot of whipping it, and something isn't going to come together. You'll probably get frustrated, and I'm just telling you, if you start to get annoyed with this trick, move on to something else for a little bit and then come back to this. This trick is a pain to learn, and there's no point making yourself miserable over a trick that just takes practice and takes a lot of it. And that's one of the biggest pieces of advice that I can give, is to just give yourself a break and just be patient with yourself. Once you land it once, landing it more generally gets easier. Not super easy, but easier. Just work at it, just keep practicing, you will get it. Just quick recap. So remember, do a whip, grab the back string with your finger, or just put your finger in, whichever feels more comfortable for you. And while that slack is spinning around the top, you want to push your yo-yo hand forward. If all goes well, you will land in a green triangle. And that will be the end of this tutorial. If you have any further questions about how to do the Brent Stole, please let me know in the comments. I'll do my best to help you out as much as I can. That's going to be it for today, and I'll see you in the next video.